Good morning, grade 1. Welcome to your SST lesson for this week. Today we are going to learn how to read a picture graph. The objective of our lesson is to interpret information using a picture graph. Now, what is a picture graph? A picture graph uses pictures to show how many there are of something. So if you recall, we just studied about picture graphs in math as well. So picture graph is a kind of graph in which we use pictures, and those pictures represent or show how many there are of something. So anything, if we talk about apples, we are going to maybe draw pictures of apples. We can draw pictures of anything to represent the number of apples, or let's say we talk about the number of students. So we can decide what we are talking about, and then we can use pictures to show how many of them there are. Now students, I want you to click on this link and watch the video. It's going to tell you what a picture graph is in detail with examples. Picture graph. Now students, picture graph is a helpful way to share information. It lets you see information at a glance. You can see picture graph in different places. For example, you can see it when you're reading a newspaper or you're reading any other non-fiction material. What is non-fiction? Non-fiction is something that is fact, that is true. So you can find picture graphs in all of these examples. Now, let's thoroughly look at this picture graph. So when you look at this picture graph, you're going to see that there are different things. First of all, it has a heading here. It has a topic here. Then we have two columns. These vertical rows, we call them columns. We have one column and two columns in this particular picture graph. And then we have three rows. Look, 1, 2, 3. Rows are the horizontal line. You can see the red mark, how it is moving. So this is the row. And how many rows do I have in the picture graph here? I have 3 rows. Let's see what each part of the picture graph represents. So we have a title of the picture graph that tells you what it is about. So this is the title of the picture graph here. What is the title of the picture graph? It is Baskets of Apples Sold. So it means this picture graph is going to tell us how many baskets of apples were sold. It's going to give us this information. And you can see in the first glance that there are apples here, and there are 3 kinds of apples that they're talking about. If this was a mixed up data and information that was not categorized in this form, it would have been difficult to identify what this whole information was about. Because it is in a picture graph, it is an efficient way to see information and to understand it quickly. This is one of the most important feature of a picture graph. Then you can see we have a key here. Now, if you do not have a key, how would you know what each apple represents here? I can say maybe this one apple represents half of the apple, or maybe I can say this one apple represents 6 apples in actual. But I should make sure that I have a key, because in picture graph we use pictures to show information. So you should always have a key, or you will always find a key next to the picture graph to describe what each picture on the picture graph represents. So here each apple shows one basket. So it means if I see, for example, we have 3 apples here. It does not mean that there are 3 red apples. Instead, it means there are 3 baskets of red apples, all right? And we see here as well in the topic that these are the baskets of apples sold. So you're always going to find a key next to a picture graph, which is going to tell in detail what each picture on the picture graph shows. Now, how we are going to look, how we are going to read a picture graph? You're always going to look at each row from left to right. Left is this, right is this. So you're always going to read from left to right. You're never going to start reading from right to left. That's not the proper way to read the picture graph. What is the proper way? It is to read from left to right. Count to see how many baskets of each kind of apple were sold. Now, since this picture graph tells us about baskets of apples sold, so the number of apples in each row representing a certain kind of information about something is going to tell us the total number of that item sold. So if it's, for example, I'm going to talk about green apples, I want to know how many baskets of green apples were sold. I'm going to count the pictures of green apples or the picture of anything. If there were no green apples, we can say they were stars. Stars could represent the number of baskets sold as well. It's for us to decide which picture we select to represent a certain data about something. So if I'm talking about green apples here, and on this picture graph they are represented by green apples, and each apple shows one basket of that certain kind of apple. So let's count how many green apples baskets were sold. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are 7 baskets of green apples sold. Now if you focus, if you see, I started reading from left and I finished reading on the right. So you always start reading from left and you move to the right. I moved to red apples. How many baskets of red apples were sold? There were 1, 2, 3. 3 baskets of red apples were sold. How many baskets of yellow apples were sold? Similarly, you're going to count these numbers of apples in front of the column of yellow apples, and you're going to get the number of baskets that were sold for yellow apples. Let's practice some questions now. We have the same picture graph here. The question is, of which kind of apple were the most baskets sold? So again, what you have to do is, you are going to start reading from left to right and you're going to count the number of baskets sold for each 3 kinds of apples here. It's green, red and yellow apple. So for green we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 baskets of green apples sold. For red it's 1, 2, 3. 3 baskets of red apples are sold. Let's look at the yellow ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 baskets of yellow apples were sold. So which of the apples had most baskets sold? It is green apples because 7 baskets of green apples were sold. Moving on. Were more baskets of red apples or yellow apples sold? It's very clear. You can see for red we have 1, 2, 3. 3 baskets of red apples were sold. For yellow we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 baskets of yellow apples were sold. Is 5 greater than 3? Yes, it is. So there were more baskets of yellow apples sold than of red apples. Let's look at the other question. Of which kind of apple were the fewest baskets sold? Fewest number of baskets were sold for, we can see, we have 7 for green, we have 3 for red, and we have 5 for yellow apples. So which of these 3 numbers is the smallest? It is number 3. Very good. So which one of the apples were sold in 3 baskets? It was red apples. So the fewest baskets sold were of red apples. Now what I want you to do is, you have to open your practice books and you have to solve page 50. Make sure you finish your homework. Thank you very much, grade 1, for joining in. I hope you enjoyed and understood the lesson today. I want you to take care of yourself. Stay safe. Bye.